Greetings, 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 greetings. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Honor and respect, honor and respect, honor and respect. It is another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. Voodoo Hoodoo 101. Powered by, sponsored by, promoted by NOIVD, New Orleans International Voodoo Day. We continue to invite you to visit our website at www.vodouday.org, www.voodooday.org for more information and coming updates about our third annual 2026 International New Orleans Voodoo Day. And we certainly invite your participation, your support, your volunteership, your sponsorship, and the like to this powerful and historic event. I want to thank Daniel Neal for joining us now live in the chat. We certainly appreciate you. And I want to thank all of my co-hosts and team members, beginning with beloved Joshua Nylan Tanner, Wildman Black Hawk Voodoo, and First Priest at Hoodoo Central, House of the Divine Prince. I want to also thank and appreciate Elder Reggie Green Soap, our elder and leader and financial administrator and confidant with NOIVD, New Orleans International Voodoo Day. And we also want to thank and welcome the Queen Mother, Sister Toni Martinez, for joining us. Thank you so much, Joshua, for being with us tonight.
Good day, everyone. I hope everyone's having a good evening. Looking forward to the show tonight. I know we kind of, the last couple of days, we wasn't live, but I'm glad to be here tonight. I'm glad to hear what we're going to bring up and what has happened within that time frame since we last spoke.
And greetings and salutations to you and yours, Elder Reggie.
Yes. Blessing divine, blessing Joshua, blessing Sister Toni, blessings to all the ones in the chat. We're here, we ready to go. Like Josh said, few nights we didn't have a show, but we back now and ready to go.
And the beloved Sister Toni Martinez.
Hey everyone, glad to be here. Hope everyone is having a great night. Elder Reggie, Joshua, Divine Prince. So glad to be here, everyone in the listening area. I was getting back to some of the research I was doing for Elder Reggie on the Spiritualist churches. and I have found some information about Mother Clara James Hyde.
Mm-hmm.
She was a legendary spiritualist and hoodoo healer in the 1920s and the 30s. She came
Mm-hmm.
from Magnolia, Mississippi to New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
And she broke racial barriers also. Like Mother Seal, she welcomed everybody, black, white, she didn't care. Of course, during those times, that was frowned upon because of segregation. Um,
Mm-hmm.
she founded 38 churches,
Mm-hmm.
the United Diverse Congregations.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a really 38 churches in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
That's unheard of,
that's
bro.
really a lot
That's
because they
completely.
had other people also with besides her doing spiritualist churches at that time.
Right. Now, Sister Toni, good research. Just keep in mind that a lot of the churches, even like the one I came up in, they were small. A lot of it was mainly family members, a few other people. Yet we would visit other churches, but the actual church was small, maybe up to 10, 12 people. And so a lot of it was not big congregations.
I
That
would
makes
agree with
sense.
that. I would say similarly, being that I have, um, uh, I've lived in the North and the South, and somewhere in between, throughout the course of my life. When we think of up north, we think of storefront churches, the corner store church. But when we think about Louisiana and Mississippi, um, we are looking at houses, as Elder Reggie described, often rooted in a family or even neighborhood communities of practitioners who would come together under the same belief system and operate from within the house. So that could also explain such a large number of the presence of these Black spiritualist churches in New Orleans during that time. But
Yes.
we don't want to negate the point brought out in the documentary, that before we saw sort of the organized Lukumi, organized Haitian voodoo, organized even Louisiana voodoo, we're really looking at maroon culture and practice and spirituality that gave us the ability to survive, but also that power that we needed to fight the system leading to Bois Cayman and the Haitian Revolution, but also to these many successful uh, slave uprisings that occurred throughout the Deep South during this particular time period. And I'm speaking particularly in the mid 1700s to the early 1800s, even before Marie Laveau's time and many of the other practitioners who we, sort of draw a line to. The institution of slavery was threatened with large groups of Africans escaping geographically throughout the region, and creating these maroon communities in the wilderness, in the swamps, far away from, sort of the direct eyesight of the overseers, and the masters. These communities were established in the Americas, throughout Louisiana, and Mississippi, but particularly in the area here that we know of as now New Orleans, from Central City to New Orleans East. And so the congealing of spiritual practice as it arrived from the Caribbean, as it arrived from West Africa, as people were sort of captured, and then resold into slavery and forced into slavery, like 12 Years a Slave demonstrated. All these practices and traditions and ways of being got incorporated into the hoodoo, into the practice. So it was only as time gave us a little space to breathe that we began to form churches and organize structured communities of operating within these practices, and may still very well operate from that frame of reference today.
Mm-hmm. You know, you raise a good point, Divine, because it's sort of like what I'm doing present day. It's a little small operation, even though it has a church feeling about it. But it is it. I'm incorporating the ATRs in the format of a church. And so it speaks exactly to what you're saying, how there's a lot of history and morphing of things coming together for a present day. Back then in the 20s and 30s, for that present day moment, it was a conglomerate of things. And those energies are still being utilized today. So you're right.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure even, predating things like, the ring shout and Gullah Geechee, which clearly, amalgamates African spirit practice and dance with Christianity and some degree of religious symbolism. But the dancing in circle and the formed ritual sacred spaces, all predate even our allowance to be exposed to Christianity. Let's keep in mind, in the earliest beginnings, they didn't want us near a Bible. They didn't want us near a church. They didn't want us near religion, period. We were just chattel, hired hands, well, not hired hands, but chattel slavery to do, their work and their bidding. We didn't have a mind. We didn't have a spirit. We didn't have a soul in those earliest incarnations of the transatlantic slave trade here in the U.S. It was only as we became more exposed to that we began to amalgamate, syncretize, mix, and allow some of this, this spillage from one tradition and one practice to another, and certainly protection, defense, masking, hiding behind a saint or a religiously accepted symbol, so that we could continue to be as Congo as we could remember, as Fan as we could invoke, as Yoruba as we can invoke within the regional spaces that we were allowed to do so. And that's where, again, NOIVD, has formed under sort of a Haitian voodoo symbolic structure, but really strives to incorporate voodoo worldwide, the Pan-African diasporic demonstration of voodoo, as it is and as it shows up in the New World, wherever we are indeed found. I came across a really powerful video today. I had intended to upload it here to the platform. I don't know what happened that I didn't get around to it, but she's basically talking about how Isheshe as a word, as a language, as a practice, has sort of been now weaponized. It's the newest form of weaponized ATR in terms of, ego. I'm operating in authentic tradition, and you're just, dabbling in the hoodoo and the voodoo, or you're just, operating in something that's a little less formal. And so she was kind of explaining how it's all Isheshe when we understand what Isheshe means. And it means, in almost a literal interpretation, the ways of old, the old ways, the ways things used to be done. So Voodoo is Isheshe. Lukumi is Isheshe. Santeria is Isheshe. When we're acknowledging that ancestral memory bank that continues to be fed, but also continues to exist in our very DNA memory. So this, tradition of revolution, of escaping oppression, of stepping out of the box, has to be the center post of whatever the practice is. If we're going to continue to call people in from our community to continue to keep these practices and these traditions alive and moving forward, they have to be beyond just ceremony, beyond just shouting and speaking in tongue, or knowing how to ritual dance and being able to speak the Yoruba or the Fon, or the Creole. Our organic connection to spirit and nature must continue to be fed for the survival of these practices and these traditions and our very survival moving forward.
I see. Yeah.
Well,
after Mother Hyde died in 1938, Mother Keller Morris, she took over the practice well into the 40s, and she was a civil rights activist and a delegate for the NAACP here in New Orleans.
okay.
And she was active in the People's Defense Fund and voter registration. She used Mother Hyde's ministry to not only heal the sick, but to mount a political resistance to the social inequalities of that day. So she was still healing people and getting out there and resisting the oppression of the day.
Mm-hmm. When you look at it and you go back in that time frame, that's in the midst of Jim Crow America, where the Ku Klux Klan is steady running around terrorizing people. To have that type of mindset to still fight through all that, help heal people, plus get people conscious of the civil rights movement, and to vote and to try to make a change. That's revolutionary within itself.
Yes. And the Klan was very active in the South at that time. The Knights of the White Camellia, that was our unit, division. They were very active. We recently had 19 bodies returned to New Orleans that's been gone over 150 years. The skull, they died in New Orleans in Charity Hospital. And the people at Charity sent them to Germany so that they could be experimented on and examined, because white people had this thing about the Negro brain being small and different than a Caucasian brain.
Yeah.
So they sat there in Germany for 150 years until that university contacted
Dillard University.
Yeah, and said, we got something, y'all, we want to return. Now, during that time period, it was rumored that the Knights of the White Camellia and up into the 20s and stuff would kidnap people off the street and bring them to Charity Hospital. It wasn't just stories they used to scare the teenagers to keep them from sneaking out the house. It actually was going on up into the 40s, according to my mother. They called them the white coat men. Don't let the white coat men get you, because you're never coming back. But they had a grand celebration and putting to rest for the 19 souls that were returned. They didn't do any DNA to see if they could find any relatives today. They say they may do that later on, but they put them to rest and had nice service for them.
They were actually a part of a much larger Nazi eugenics program
Yes.
that was designed to determine, you know, ultimately that, you know, that they were superior to us and other ethnic groups and other, you know, forms of humanity.
Yeah, the Nazi kept that. That was a German theory, and the Nazis just played right on into it and kept it going and kept it going and kept it going. It's just the things our people were subjected to. It just is unbelievable, and they want to erase that. They want to erase that, getting rid of DEI and changing the history books and taking down stuff off of websites. Now they want to rename all the military ships that's named after Harriet Tubman and Medgar Evers and Harvey Milk and Che Guevara. They want to change and rename and just think they can erase us out of history, or we don't have anything, but we're not gonna let that happen.
That's right.
But they're doing actually a great job, at least right now, in terms of social media and the campaign of miseducation. So you now have Black people claiming slavery didn't happen. You now have Black people claiming they are not African or don't have African ancestry. All sorts of, you know, pseudo propagandic, you know, context to sort of dilute our story.
Yeah,
if not erase it altogether.
They still have a lot of people that's keeping the keeping those records and saving them away, and on the premise this too shall pass.
Yeah.
You know, we just holding on to it so it can be put back. We believe that it'll all be returned. I had put a thing on my Facebook page that said all humans descended from a common ancestor known as mitochondrial Eve, who lived approximately 150,000 to 200,000 years ago in Africa. She represents the most recent woman through whom every living person today traces maternal lineage. Her mitochondrial DNA line is the sole lineage surviving to the present day. And I'm just gonna sit this right here for everybody to hear it. I saw a video where they took some DNA tests of some white people, and when the DNA test showed them having African ancestry, they lost their mind. They really lost their mind.
Yeah.
They cried, they sobbed, they called other relatives, they was in denial.
Truth is not pleasant.
I mean, they just lost it. I always said one of the criteria of joining the clan should be you need to take a DNA test first.
Yeah, gotta be careful.
That's one way to get rid of them.
You gotta be careful with that too.
Well, that's one way to get rid of them.
Well, I don't know, Sister Toni, because the guy that got arrested for the Proud Boys for that fiasco January 20th, he was of mixed heritage, and he was the leader of the Proud Boy. And to me, that's a modern Ku Klux Klan. So,
Oh yeah,
I can't think of his name right now. And
I know
even
you're talking about. He Puerto Rican, I think.
right, yeah, you got to be careful because even when Marlo was doing his maroonage out in the Bienvenus in the backwaters of New Orleans, they sent a posse of Creole men to capture him. For one, they had relations with the people, and also they knew the backwaters through the swamps. So we always have agent provocators who willing to work with the other side against their people own best interest. And so I'm just saying we just gotta walk lightly with that one.
Yeah, it's a lot of them. Like I love to say, all skin folks ain't kin folks. I mean, we got them today. We got them today. We see them on the news. We see them on CNN. You know, I ran across a video where this black girl was saying white people don't hate black people. They just tired of us whining.
Wow.
I had to scroll by because I didn't feel like spending an hour cussing her out on TikTok.
No.
You know, I just had to let it go. Some things you just gotta let go. And she had a picture in the background of Candace. What her name is, Candace?
Owens. Yeah.
Yeah, Candace Owens up on the wall like JFK or Martin Luther King in your mama house. She had Candace Owens on her wall.
Yeah.
A lot of our people are brainwashed. A lot of our people haven't went back enough in history and they own history.
Yeah, and they own individual history, I would say.
Right.
And they
We're such a diverse people, though. We're so diverse of a people that I think that we owe that of ourselves to do that, because it's devaluing us if we don't do that. Our awareness is not there if we don't do that. Our know-how or our information, our ancestral whatever that's dormant in our ancestral bloodline or DNA, it's dormant until you do that. You can't activate any of that without individually doing that.
Good point, Joe.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yes. And they got a whole new breed out there of people that they don't know what they are. They're so confused. You know, like I like to tell people that claim they're not black, like the Mexicans. I'm like, y'all just from another state. Y'all both got off on that side. Y'all ancestors come from that side. Y'all still black, baby. Because a lot of them really think they white, especially them Cubans.
Right.
I have to tell them Cubans, the only thing different in me and you is where the boat stopped at.
Yeah. But like what Josh hit up on, there is diverse and a lot of mixing. And now this is 200 years removed from that mixing, and you got modern day people. And when everyone's doing a DNA test, we're getting percentages from a lot of different ethnicities. So that tells us right there that but the majority of it, especially in African Americans, are coming from Africa, but we all walking with admixtures.
We also got to be careful in terms of the study of eugenics and the study of DNA. If they just returned 19 black bodies that they had over in Nazi that was being tested on because they wanted to prove us being inferior, that means their study of eugenics was with the mindset of making sure that they prove that we're inferior to them. So that means they was looking at stuff that's like taking pair of scissors and trying to cut a steak with it. You don't know what you're doing. You have the information. You don't have the proper tools to even, or mindset to even execute what you're doing. Like you are trying to alter something to be something that it's not. So you're not going to see the truth or even study it accurately enough to come up with information that's reliable. That's the issue with that. With DNA.
And you got to remember, those 19 skulls was being experimented on long before Hitler and the rise of the Nazis. That was
Yeah.
150 years ago.
Right, right, Margaret. Yeah, the
This is
eugenics.
a long game. It's a chess game.
Yeah,
So they've been on that quest to prove us inferior 150 years ago.
With science and education.
Yes. But I'm
We just got to be
thinking
careful.
150 years ago, they didn't have very good medical intelligence back then.
No, we still was. That was before. Was that before World War I?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So yeah.
Oh,
We didn't
yeah.
have that. That's where we had the advances in technology, well, science and the medical field. The boom was during that time.
Yeah. Well,
That
y'all,
was
it's
before.
time. Our time is up. I would like to get Elder Reggie to close out with the International Voodoo Day information for everyone who missed it at the beginning.
Yes. Thanks for the passing of the torch, Sister Toni. Good night, everyone. As we continue to march forward toward the International New Orleans Voodoo Day, the tentative date is not fully arrived yet, but when that information comes, we will be updating. There's an event on June 29th. I would like everyone to come out to. It's going to be a marker that we as a collective with the International New Orleans Voodoo Day put together to represent some marchers that died in 1866 in the New Orleans race riot. And so the work is going forward, the unveiling, the truth is beginning to come out, even with the 19 skulls being returned. And as we continue to push and the spirits and the ancestors backing us up, more stuff will be revealed. More of our internal Holocaust will be remembered. And we'll continue to move forward through the strength of voodoo, whatever persuasion of voodoo you use. So with that, I say good night, everyone. And as Divine always said, respect the voodoo. Good night.
Yes, good night, everyone. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
It may sound like I'm banging on a well-beaten drum at this point, but that doesn't make it any less true. The worst affliction upon the oppressed is not an ignorant mind alone. It is instead an ignorant mind that has been fed false knowledge. Because an ignorant mind alone might continue to search for the liberating truth that frees it. But an ignorant mind that has been fed false knowledge, believing that the false knowledge is true, stops searching for the liberating truth and becomes mentally enslaved by the false knowledge. False knowledge also transforms its believers into wardens of their own mental prisons, because it makes them fight against those who are trying to free their minds by teaching them the truth. In fact, some of our people are so mentally enslaved by false knowledge that trying to teach them the truth that frees them is literally as difficult as trying to feed medicine to the dead. Many of our people are afraid to learn the truth because our identities are now so deeply connected to the false knowledge. This is the case in regards to Black people that now believes in Jesus and Willie Lynch. Please critically think and apply common sense. If the stories of Jesus and Willie Lynch were true knowledge that could possibly lead to our liberation, those two literatures would have been kept as far away as possible from us, instead of being so oversaturated within our communities. as they presently are. This is common sense because oppressors never make liberating knowledge easily accessible to those they are trying to continually oppress. However, the literatures about Willie Lynch and Jesus Christ have been made easily accessible to the Black community because they're both false knowledge that mentally enslaves us. Here's how. Our beliefs in the Bible mentally enslaves us by making us complacently wait for eternity for a fictional Jesus to return from heaven to rescue us. And our beliefs in the Willie Lynch myth mentally enslaves us by making us believe that our core problem is an internalized one. It makes us believe that there's something internally wrong with us, which creates profound feelings of hopelessness and self-doubt within our ability to actually liberate ourselves. Believing in Jesus Christ and Willie Lynch actually prevents us from learning the truth that's necessary in order to liberate ourselves. Those of us who don't critically think never notices our mental change. They've got our people so mentally enslaved by these false knowledge that telling the Black liberating truth now literally offends millions. Many of our people also rejects all Black liberating truths because of the inherent call for action that comes from accepting the truth. They therefore instead cling to their false knowledge, which allows them to remain complacent, stagnant, and mentally enslaved to the benefit of our oppressors. However, the sooner we learn to accept facts, the sooner we will stop being mentally enslaved by false knowledge. In order to truly liberate ourselves, we must gain a clear, concise, and accurate understanding of our plight and condition. Because if our understandings are flawed, then all of our liberating strategies that stems from those misunderstandings will also be flawed. We must learn the truth in order to develop the proper counter strategies that are necessary in order to liberate ourselves. This is why those of us who knows the truth must teach. Here's the truth. The supreme art of war is to subdue an enemy without fighting. That's from Sun Tzu, the book, The Art of War. The white oppressors have achieved this objective in regards to Black people. They've developed a control system that allows them to continue their subjugation of the Black population without any Black resistance. It's the truth of our plight and condition. It's no strange coincidence that millions of Black people now think in ways that are beneficial to the white society. It's always by deliberate design whenever the oppressed population starts thinking exactly as their oppressors wants them to think. Black people are the most manipulated and controlled group in history as a result of the constant programming and conditioning by way of mass media and public education. Today, the white oppressors now subjugates the Black population without any Black resistance by deploying psychological warfare propaganda campaigns that manipulates our collective minds in ways that serves and protects the interests of their white society. Through their monopoly over information that we receive, which logically allows them to control what we believe, white oppressive forces have manipulated millions of Black people to think in ways that are against our own self-interest and instead in ways that serves and protects the interests of their white society. The eyes are useless when the oppressors kept ignorant. So those who know the truth must teach. Case, point, and proof. I will therefore demonstrate that the common false beliefs held by millions of Black people are directly connected to white propaganda campaigns. 1. The reason why millions of black people are now self-loathing and now perceives ourselves as being our own worst enemies is because of the white media's propaganda campaigns that exaggerates the issue of black on black crimes and that subjects us to receiving only the fraudulent worst narratives about ourselves. The reason why millions of black people now perceives it that slavery benefited us is because, again, by fraudulent white propaganda campaigns that miseducates us to believe that our ancestors were ignorant and uncivilized before the Europeans invaded, and because of media propaganda campaigns that subjects us to seeing only the fraudulent, worst, poorest parts of Africa. That miseducation and media propaganda campaign literally makes millions of black people feel indebted to the white society for having brutally enslaved our ancestors, because we've been manipulated to perceive it as having been more of a rescue mission that ultimately benefited us. That propaganda campaign makes many of us feel indebted to the white society. The reason why some black people now feel inherently subordinate to whites is because all narratives and study results, all information from white sources favors whites over blacks. Through constant repetitive programming, this subliminally embeds the myth of white racial superiority into the subconscious minds of many black people. Instilling this myth into the subconscious minds of black people makes many black people feel subservient towards whites, which aids the white society in maintaining its social dominance and social capital over the black population. The reason why millions of black people now believe that most of our enslaved ancestors were sold off by other Africans is because white historians rewrote history of the African slave trade to favor their white society. Their revision intentionally makes the white invaders appear more humane and less immoral, and it shifts the blame of the African slave trade more greatly upon we Africans. Furthermore, this fits with their false narrative that black people are our worst enemies. To further convey the falsehood that most African slaves were sold off by other Africans, several white artists were hired to create pictures of Africans selling their fellow Africans to the white invaders. Reproduction of those drawings and paintings can still be found within our American school textbooks even today. Therefore, every time that an African-American student reads about the African slave trade, those pictures are placed between the text, subliminally conveying the message that it was our fellow Africans that wronged us and not the white enslavers. We are being programmed to think in ways that benefits the white society. Furthermore, to believe that the greedy white invaders went into Africa with weaponry advantage of guns, rifles, and cannons, and gunpowder, but rather than maximizing their profit by stealing most of theirs, like the enslaved, they instead found some way to purchase most of them, is absolutely BS. Because such a claim totally contradicts over 500 years of demonstrated behavior by whites in regard to black people and making profit. That's total BS. Furthermore, critically think and ask yourself this question. If Africans originally owned all of the gold, diamonds, minerals, and natural resources, and Western money had no value whatsoever in Africa, how then did the white invaders purchase most of their enslaved Africans? Clearly, that's not the case. The human mind is like a computer. No matter how efficient it may be, its reliability is only as great as the information fed into it. If it's possible to control the input into the human mind, then regardless of how intelligent people are, it's entirely possible to control what they will believe. We are the books we read, the education we're taught, and the media images and contents that we watch. Because these are controlled by the white society, They've exploited this scenario to manipulate our minds in ways that benefits themselves. In fact, to create an elaborate prison for our minds. The nefarious practice is called ideological subversion. It's an offensive psychological warfare tactic wherein which the dominant population exploits its monopoly over information and media images that are fed into the minds of the subordinate population by deliberately feeding the subordinates disinformation, misinformation, and distortions that are designed to shape our collective minds and thoughts and behaviors in ways that are against our own interests and in ways that instead serves and protects the white society. This is the truth. They have deployed an ideological subversion system against us. And this is why we speak negatively of ourselves and favorably of them. We must function based on what is true in order to liberate ourselves. When we try to liberate ourselves based upon a biblical fairy tale and a silly slave syndrome myth, that's like a people trying to liberate themselves using a comic book. That's as ridiculous as a child going into war with a toy gun. I know, they got people so mentally enslaved that tell you the truth offends millions. But we must function based on what is true in order to liberate ourselves. Brothers and sisters, wake up to our reality. One love and peace.
Toni.